Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, harmonizing the gospel accounts. We left off last time at Matthew chapter 14, verse 4. We are studying the period this time where Herod, that is Herod Antipas, there were different Herods throughout history. Herod thinks that Jesus is John, and we talked a little bit about that last Sunday. He believed that it was John the Baptist risen from the dead, and that the mighty works that Jesus was performing was because that John had come back from the dead. But no, he was mistaken. It wasn't John. But if you're kind of wondering why he would jump to that conclusion, all we have to do is continue to read there at verse 3, where we touched that last week, because it said, "For Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife." He had a guilty conscience, no doubt. This man had imprisoned a good man who was out there doing the will of God, simply because, verse 4, "For John said unto him, It is not lawful for thee to have her." And that's where we left off last week. I want to ask one more time. I asked it last week and I want to ask again. Whose law did he break? Was the Roman law anything that we know of in the Roman Empire that forbade such a thing? Not to my knowledge. Matter of fact, the Roman Empire was pretty lascivious and sometimes very immoral in the things they did, so I don't think they would have had a major issue with the law in that regard. The only other law that would make sense is the law of God. And John had the courage to tell Herod that it is not lawful for thee to have her, which was his brother Philip's wife. Now, this is not only wrong because this was his brother's wife, it's wrong because she was anybody else's wife. It just so happened to be that it was his brother's wife. The reason this is wrong is because God has made it clear in His Word what He expects when it comes to marriage. Open with me to Matthew 19. I know that's getting 5 chapters ahead, but this will help us. Beginning at verse 3, "The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause?" Here's the way we would probably say it today. Is it okay for a man to divorce his wife for any reason whatsoever? Well, what's the answer? Look at verse 4. "And let us also remember that this is Jesus who was giving the answer. And he answered and said unto them, Have ye not read?" I'm going to stop right there for a moment. Jesus implies by his response that the people who are tempting him and asking such a question should have already had the knowledge beforehand. The idea of "have ye not read" means they should have already studied it. They should already have it in their minds. This should not be a problem. But Jesus answers them nonetheless. "Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning," that's God, "made them male and female?" How hard is that to understand? How many males did he create at the beginning? 1. How many Eves did he create at the beginning? 1. Did he create Adam and Steve? Or did he create Evelyn and Eve? How hard is this to understand? 1 man, 1 woman. And they were supposed to come together, leave father and mother. From that point forward, this is the way marriage would be. Leave father and mother, verse 5, "And said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife," singular, not plural, not husband either, wife, "and they twain two shall be one flesh." Jesus tells them very plainly, you should already know this answer. And it's not difficult. Friends, I am ashamed of how far our knowledge has gotten, or lack thereof, of simple, basic truth. It is embarrassing that people today are considered educated people, reasonable people, and they can be so far off on something this simple. And yet many are. 1 man, 1 woman, 2 shall be one flesh. That was God's design for marriage. "Wherefore," verse 6, "they are no more twain, 2, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, the 1 man and the 1 woman, let not man put asunder." Is that hard to understand? I mean, it is so simple you almost need help not to understand what he's saying.
It's hard to understand if you do not study it.
Well, I understand that's true, but that would be ignorance, yes. And in that regard, yes. And a lot of folks, to what you're saying, and to be honest about it, a lot of folks won't read it today and don't read it and have no idea that it's even there. People have gotten to the point now that they believe man can define what a marriage is. Friends, man has never been the definer of marriage. God has. From the beginning, He defined it. He set it up. He ordained it. How dare we think we can ever change what He has done? And that's how far we've come as a society. That we have people that are supposed to be educated enough to be in positions of power who cannot stand and firmly teach and uphold the simple truth of marriage. I remember back when I first started preaching, I was very green, as you can imagine, but there were things about, and I was a young man then. I remember working in Alabama and trying to tell the people there in Alabama where I was preaching that if we were not careful what was coming, I warned them what was coming. And I'm not a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but it didn't take a prophet to see where things were headed. And I warned them that if you're not careful and things don't change, you're going to wake up one day, or you're going to have to deal with one day the idea that homosexuals are going to claim they can marry one another. And when I said that, I imagine there were some people who probably said that, nah, that'll never happen. Because it had never been that way yet in our country, and they just assumed that it would never ever get to that way. 2016, the Supreme Court made one of the worst decisions they've ever made when they said that homosexuals could marry in the side or legally. Now, whether you agree or not with politics on it, the Bible is clear on it. That's all I'm trying to stand up for today, is the truth of God's Word. And if that offends people, then it offends people. If it upsets people, it upsets people. I will not, I shall not, you're not going to force me, they're not going to force me to change what God has said on this matter or any for that matter. If we're going to uphold the truth of one thing, we ought to uphold the truth of everything. And not let what people think stop us. Now, verse 7, still in Matthew 19. Remember, John had told Herod that it was not lawful for him to have his brother Philip's wife. They say unto him, why did Moses then command to give her a writing of divorcement and to put her away? If that's what God's original plan was, which is what they understood there, they understood that they were supposed to be one man, one woman for life and not put it asunder, then why did Moses command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. Guess what? Before ever Moses was ever on this earth, before the law of Moses was ever put on this earth, God had already defined marriage. That's the point. Marriage, by the way, is not a Christian thing either. Marriage predates Christianity by thousands of years. Marriage is a man and a woman thing joined by God. That's what marriage is. And I say unto you, verse 9, whosoever, now, again, how much plainer could he be? Whosoever means what? Whosoever, whoever it is. It's not limited in scope. It's whoever it will be. Whosoever shall put away, that means divorce, his wife, except it be for fornication, she's cheated on him, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And notice it's a ETH on the verb form, which means they continue to stay in that condition of adultery. There are some people who believe you cannot live in adultery, that adultery is an act that you commit one time and then you cease that committing it when you're not fornicating. Friends, you can live in adultery. You continue to live in that state if you're still in that wrong relationship. And whoso marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery. How hard is that? I mean, friends, it's so easy. Like I said, we need help to misunderstand it. He couldn't have been any plainer if he'd wanted to. The problem is people don't want to adhere to it. They want to do what they want, and they want everyone else to allow it and to agree with them, and how dare us ever say that anything they do is wrong. Friends, I don't care if I'm doing it, you're doing it, or they're doing it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Now that's what marriage is. Why was it then unlawful? Matthew chapter 14, we go back there again. Why then was it not lawful for Herod to have his brother Philip's wife? Because it violates the law of marriage. Philip was still alive at this point. There's no indication whatsoever that fornication was the reason for the putting away, and therefore for Herod to be with Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, is sin. It's adultery. That's why it was not lawful. Anybody have any questions or comments or any hiccups on that of understanding why that's the case? Okay? Now put yourself in John's position. Herod's in a position of power. He had the courage to tell him this. What if our president we were given audience saying, let's not throw our president current, let's just throw any president in the past, present, or future that has been in adultery. What if we had audience with him? Would we have the courage to go in and tell him it's not lawful for thee to have her? That's what John did. He had the courage to stand up and tell this man that. What did he get for his trouble? He was put in prison. Friends, standing for the truth of God's Word sometimes is not popular, and sometimes it will cause you to be persecuted. I am still amazed to a degree at how far in such a short amount of time Christians have gotten to the point where they are looked in a negative light by society. It used to be that the people that you thought were the most upstanding people in your community were supposed to be Christians. And now it's looked by some people like Christians are the most hateful, unloving, unkind people on the face of this earth. And friends, why? Because we won't agree with sin? If that's what it takes for us to, quote, get along with them, I'm going to get along with God first. Now, do I want to live peaceably with all men? Yes, the Bible tells me as much as possible I should live peaceably with all men. Some men don't want that. Some people want what they want. Herod wanted what he wanted. He wanted his brother Philip's wife, so he took her. And he put John in prison for it. And when he would have put him to death, he was so mad at John, so ill at John, he wanted to kill him. And when he would have put him to death, I find out what kind of man Herod really is. He's a coward. He feared the multitude. Told you, he's a coward. He cares more about public opinion about John than he does about his own conviction about John. He thinks John deserves to die. He thinks John should be put to death. But he feared the multitude. He's a coward. Because the multitude, the people, counted him, John, as a prophet. So he knew, politically speaking, I do anything to kill. If I kill John, I'm in trouble. I'm going to get backlash from this. So he puts him in prison instead. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod. I'm going to ask a very simple question. Is it wrong for a husband and wife in the privacy of their home to dance with one another? No. Is it wrong for a young lady to come out immodestly dressed and to gyrate her body all around in lascivious ways in front of men? How many times do you ever hear it put that way anymore? But that's the truth, is it not? That's what's happening. Then it's wrong, right? Because that's not what God wants us to be doing with our bodies. And by the way, that's why it was wrong here. If anyone can look at the so-called modern dance that exists today and not see something wrong with a whole lot of it, then our standards have lowered so badly. Friends, we're not talking about an innocent waltz or we're not talking about something along those lines in a husband and wife in private and nothing other. We're talking about a woman coming out here dancing around in front of men, young girl, a teenage girl perhaps, young girl, bringing herself out there dancing around to please them. Now what does that sound like? Did anybody say anything? That's exactly what it almost sounds like. It almost sounds like you're at a strip club. Now, literally, they might not have been taking all the clothes off, but the idea of the body movements and things of that nature are very similar.
They're wearing already outside of the strip club. They don't wear very much.
Well, no, they didn't wear very much sometimes anyway. But
when I grew up, I was in a denomination, and now
Dance of the Seven Bells.
was removed. How much more of a strip is that?
It's interesting to me. The purpose for this was not anything but pleasing those men at Herod's birthday. That's it. And it did please Herod. By the way, ladies, I'm going to ask a favor of you this morning. From a male perspective, your bodies are different than ours. Please know that. I just shocked you, didn't I? And granted, that's so basic, but friends, our bodies are different than yours. God designed the female body to be attractive to males. There's nothing in and of itself wrong with that, as long as one does not take it too far. We're not to lust after one who's not our wife in our hearts, then we take it too far. We're not to act upon that and end up committing adultery or fornication, that goes too far. But generally speaking, when a woman that is a pleasant-looking woman, and she is physically in such a way moving her body around to entice a man, then yes, he's probably going to have thoughts in his head. Both are wrong. I hear sometimes, no, it's just the man, the old lustful man. It's all his fault. Friends, it's both of them's fault. Trying to railroad one or the other is not going to help anything. Yeah, and the reason is that people want to be able to continue to wear whatever they want to wear, and everybody else should accept it and not make an issue of it. Wrong is wrong is wrong.
Well, I do an issue. My granddaughter could not come into my house without climbing clothes because I had told them so. They don't come.
Well, I made it abundantly clear. I made it abundantly clear when Brooke was very little. There were certain things she wasn't wearing. We didn't buy the clothes for her. If somebody gave us something, she still didn't wear it, even if we disagreed with it. She never learned that that was okay. Never.
If you don't teach, then they'll not learn.
That's the point I want to make. She never has known anything different that she's, quote, missing out on, as they want to say sometimes. She's not missing out on anything. And she never has. She's been modestly dressed, and she has been comfortable enough, just like the rest of us who modestly are dressed. This was wrong for this young girl to be out there dancing before them. We need to uphold that more. We've gotten away from standing on that truth. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. You think he enjoyed it? He enjoyed it so much he'll give her whatever she wants. Ladies, be careful with what influence you can have over the males. You can have them literally eating out of your hand. That's the way God designed you, and God designed us. There is going to be an effect that a woman can have on a man. Now, ladies, he's not right in what he does. I'm not justifying it. Please don't leave here and think, oh, all Corey's doing is blank. No, he's not. Bathsheba was wrong, so was David. It goes both ways.
Pedophilia is immensely wrong and always will be. And this was a young lady.
Yeah, I can't say for sure her age. I can't say for sure the age, but she's looked at. She's not talked about here in her own ways. She's talked about as being the daughter of somebody, which is kind of interesting, the language there, which could very well be, again, the fact that she's not of age at that moment in time. Now, a lot of folks disagree, or some folks disagree about Bathsheba, and I don't want to cause an argument with that. If you do believe that she was okay in what she was doing, I would be willing to show you why I disagree with that, but I would not make an issue of fellowship over it one way or the other. But she has enticed this man and pleased this man so much, he makes one of the dumbest responses he could have ever given. I'll give her whatever she wants. Any man who ever gets that point where he's ready to give somebody whatever they want because of it, he's in trouble. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being instructed of her mother, said, give me here John Baptist's head and a charger. If you didn't think Herodias was behind or was going along with Herod in this relationship that was wrong, I think we learn right here that she is. She didn't like the fact that John's statement had put her in a negative light either, that it was not lawful for those two individuals to be together. And not only did Herod want him put to death, but wouldn't do it because he was a coward or feared the multitude, she wants him dead, and she's going to get her way. Give me here John Baptist's head and a charger. You know what a charger is, right? Big platter-looking thing. Usually holds a plate. Big thing. She wants his head brought to her on that. I am not exaggerating. The only way that can happen, friends, is that the head is removed from the physical body. That's what this woman wants. You talk about a bloodthirsty, vengeful woman. That's what she wants her daughter to ask. Now, it's one thing enough for her to want it herself and say it. She's making her daughter ask, or is encouraging her daughter to ask such a thing. And the king was sorry for the oath's sake. You know, I know they wore sandals primarily probably back then, but I could just imagine he choked on about a size 12 sandal, about as much as he could once he realized what he had said and what he's going to have to do. Remember, he feared the multitude. He didn't want to put him to death because he feared the multitude. Now he's opened his mouth and said, I'll give you whatever you want. And guess what they want? John dead. For the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, since they heard him say it, he commanded it to be given her. Doesn't sound like this man's got much of a backbone. But anyway. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. Friend, the only thing John did was uphold what God's law was on marriage. That's all he did. Do you believe today that there are opportunities, or there are times where perhaps in this country and in other countries that if things don't change, that gospel preachers and Christians in general who uphold God's standard of marriage could possibly be persecuted and put in jail? Do you think that some, if things continue to go the way they're going, might get to the point that they want it silenced so much so that no one is saying anything against it, that they might want some of us put to death? About 20-something years ago, folks may not have believed me when I told them what was coming. I know we're not there yet, and I hope we never get there. But friends, it ain't looking so good in some places, in some ways. Now, the kingdom will never be destroyed, Daniel 2:44. It will continue on. God's people will be fine, regardless of what happens to us physically. If we're faithful to our God, we'll be with Him in heaven. That's what matters anyway. But if public opinion and things of that nature don't swing in another direction somewhat in the next 25 to 50 years, by the time I am getting ready to check out of this world, I don't know what my grandkids are going to see. I say, if you think it's bad now, and it's terrible now, it can get that much worse. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. Wow, what a mama. Don't you want her for your mama? And his disciples came and took up the body and buried it and went and told Jesus. Now, I find that latter part of verse 12 interesting. Why would they go and tell Jesus? Because they understood that Jesus was the one that came to John, and he was the one that John said, "Behold, the Lamb of God which taketh away the sin of the world." John had identified Jesus to his disciples, that this is he which was to come after me, whose shoe latchet he was not worthy to unloose. Or to loose, rather. You're at a point here where now their leader, if you want to call him that, of their movement is dead. So who are they going to go to? The one John pointed to. And we have to stop right there because we're not ready for the remainder of Matthew chapter 14 just yet. That is Herod, who thinks that Jesus is John, and the beheading of John. Any questions or comments? Friends, do you think I hate people? I ask that because I don't want to come across that way. I love the souls of every single person, regardless of the sin that they have committed. Because guess what? I've committed some too. But I unapologetically hate sin. in my life, their lives, or any life. Sin destroys. Sin separates us from God, Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. Sin is contrary to good. If God thinks it's abomination, if God hates it, we should too. And that's not wrong. Is it wrong to hate the person? Yes. Wrong not to try to help them? Yes. Wrong to stand up for truth? No. Let's go to Mark chapter 6. We'll look at Mark's account. Someone read for us verses 14 through 29. Mark 6, 14 through 29. Go ahead, brother.
And he marveled because of their unbelief. And he went around about the village teaching. And he called unto him the 12, and began to send them forth two by two, and gave them power over unclean spirits.
Brother Wayne, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're where we need to be. Chapter 6 of Mark, verse 14.
Okay, so.
That's okay.
And King Herod heard of him, for his name was spread abroad, and he said, that John the Baptist was risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. Others said that it is Elias, and others said that it is a prophet, or as one of the prophets. But when Herod heard thereof, he said, it is John whom I beheaded. He is risen from the dead. So Herod himself had sent forth and laid hold upon John, and bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. For John had said unto Herod, it is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. Therefore Herodias had a fall against him, and would have killed him, but she could not. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man, and that holy and observed him. When he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. And when a convenient day was come that Herod, on his birthday, made a supper to his lords, high captains and chief estates of Galilee. When the daughter of the said Herodias came in and danced, and pleased Herod and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it to thee. And he sware unto her, whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I will give it to thee up unto half of my kingdom. And she went forth and said unto her mother, what shall I ask? And she said, the head of John the Baptist. She came in straightway with haste unto the king and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in charge the head of John the Baptist. And the king was exceeding sorry, yet for his own sake, oath's sake, and for their sake which sat with him, he would not reject her. And immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. And he went and beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head in a charger and gave it to the damsel. The damsel gave it to her mother. And when his disciples heard of it, they came and took up his corpse and laid it in a tomb.
All right, thank you for the reading. Mark doesn't give us a whole lot more than what Matthew did, but there is something in particular that is an addition here that we didn't find in Matthew 14, and that is that Mark 6:15, others said that it is Elias. Not only were some, or did he think, or Herod did, that it was John the Baptist, but there were some other folks that thought Jesus was Elijah. Which, by the way, when you go back and you study Elijah the prophet and the way that Jesus was bold and the way that he was bold, so I can see how some people might want to put that together, but nonetheless, Elijah or Elias was to come before the Messiah was to come, remember? And that was done in the form of John the Baptist. Others, though, just said it was that he is a prophet or one of the prophets, which that's okay. I mean, he was a prophet, but they were not seeing the whole picture there. That wasn't a sense of the okay that they should have limited him just to that. He is the Son of God. But Herod, he's convinced. In his mind, there's no way around it. It is John whom I beheaded, verse 16. He is risen from the dead. Therefore, Herod was not a Sadducee. I'm serious. He couldn't have been a Sadducee. You know why? Because the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection. So Herod was no Sadducee. It is John whom I beheaded, for he is risen from the dead. For Herod himself had sent forth and laid hold upon John and bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. Same idea, for John had said unto Herod, it is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. And it wasn't just the idea of his brother's wife. The law of marriage is also violated in this area. And again, Herodias was a very vengeful woman. Verse 19, she had a quarrel. What is a quarrel? A disagreement, a problem. Therefore Herodias had a quarrel against him and would have killed him, but she could not. If she'd just got her hands on him, she'd have done it. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man and holy. We learn a little bit more about Herod's thoughts on John here. And observed him. And when he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. Herod had no major problems with John until John stepped up and said, it is not lawful for thee to have her. Matter of fact, Herod agreed with John on quite a few things, apparently. Then we have the birthday supper again. We have the daughter being brought in, dancing and pleasing him, and the king's high captains and lords and so on. But Herod is so taken in by her, ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it thee. He even goes so far in Mark's account, we have it listed more information, unto the half of my kingdom. I'll grant you, Herodias is already in a position here, being with Herod, that she's probably enjoying about half of that anyway. But you literally have it being put out here with an oath that this young lady, the daughter of Herodias, could ask for anything she wanted up to half of Herod's kingdom. Anything. And she is so dead set she wants this man dead, she wants his head, and that's what she got. Not money, not power. Oh, I guess you could say power. She had power enough to get this done. She went forth, verse 24, and said unto her mother, what shall I ask? And she said, the head of John the Baptist. And she came in straightway. She went back very quickly with haste unto the king and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in a charge of the head of John the Baptist. We find out again the king was exceeding sorry, verse 26, yet for his oath's sake, he's a coward, remember, and for their sakes which sat with him, because they overheard it, he would not reject her. The executioner is sent, verse 27. John's head is brought in a charger, verse 28. The damsel gives it to her mother. And I'm going to be very blunt with you. And maybe I'm a little morbid on this. Maybe I am. I wonder what she did with it. What was that? Oh no, the head of John.
Gave it to Mama.
Well, I know that. I'm wondering what she did with it. Maybe, what did Herodias do with it after her daughter gave it? That's what I mean. Again, maybe I'm morbid, but it's my curiosity. What did she do with it? Maybe I'll find out then. Being the type of woman we've seen her be, I can only speculate, and that gets me in trouble if I go too far, but it would not have surprised me if this became a trophy for a period of time.
And they were no embalmed the people in that time.
Well, now, there was embalming all the way back to Joseph. All the way back in the book of Genesis, embalming had been done by the Egyptians. So there was... Well, embalming was known, and it was done by some, but no, I'm not sure that what you can do to embalm just a head. That'd be interesting, but no, I wouldn't think that's what they did at all, no. And when his disciples heard of it, they came and took up his corpse and laid it in a tomb. All right, that's Mark's account. Very quickly, Luke chapter 9, it's a lot shorter. Verses 7 and 9, who will read those? All right, Scott.
Herod the teacher heard of all that was done by him. He was perplexed, so that he had set some that John was risen from the dead, and of some that Elias had appeared, and of others that one of the old prophets was risen again. Herod said, John about beheaded. Who is this of whom I hear such things? And desired to see him.
All right. You get to the point here where Herod heard all that was done by him. Who's the him there? We need to remember this. That's Jesus. Remember, he's hearing about what Jesus was doing. And he was perplexed. Some had told him John was risen. Some had told him Elijah had appeared. Others told him he was just one of the old prophets risen again. But John was again convinced, verse 9, this is John. I beheaded him. He's come back. But then you find the question, but who is this of whom I hear such things? And he desired to see him. He wants to even see Jesus. I don't think Jesus would have had any problem appearing before him. But nonetheless, that was his desire. He's so convinced, though it's John, he wants to see it for himself. He believes that John has been risen from the dead. Anything on Luke's account? Told you it was a lot shorter. Nothing more? All right, let's move on. We move now to the withdrawal and then return to Herod's territory. The first part of which is the apostles' return. Where are they returning from now? Do you remember? Where had they gone on? What had they done? The limited commission, right? All right, they return and they go to the eastern shore of Galilee. Let's go to Matthew 14:13. One verse. And when Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the city. Make sure I got the right one there. Yes, I did. A desert place. I want to help us with that for a moment. There is a place, and I'd have to go back and I'd have to look it up real quick. And I say quick, I'd have to take me a few minutes probably to find it. But there is a verse in the New Testament that talks about a desert place and then the fact that the people sat down on grass. And there are some people who say that has to be a contradiction or something there. A desert sand. The desert is just dry. There's no green grass on which to sit when you get into the desert. That's because the word desert here means deserted. It's not populated. That's all it means here. It doesn't necessarily mean Sahara, although it could have been. But it means a place where it was uninhabited. It was deserted. It had no people in it. And that's where Jesus departed thence by ship into a desert or deserted place apart, and when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. He can't get away from them right now, is kind of the idea. This is going to be a recurring theme for a little... Yes, sir, go ahead. Oh, is it right there? 19. And there you go, and he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass. Thank you, Scott. That's it. And took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. I didn't realize it was the same chapter, but that's it right there. They sat down on the grass. But it's a desert place. That's not desert the way we think desert. I just wanted to throw that out to you if you ever hear that argument given by some people. All right. Jesus has multitudes following him. It stays that way for a little while. He's very popular, and rightfully so. He's performing miracles. He's doing great deeds. People want to be around him. I'd love to tell you it stays that way. But it doesn't. Eventually, not a single person will stand with him. And he'll be there on his own. We're going to stop today right there. We'll pick up next time, Mark chapter 6, verses 30 and 32, where we continue the withdrawal and return into Herod's territory of the apostles and going to the eastern shore of Galilee. Thank you for your time.